Hello and welcome to Skill Techathon. This is SQL interview questions and answer series. In today's video, we are going to solve a very important SQL interview question that tests your understanding of aggregations, date functions, and window functions, concepts that are extremely common in real-world data analytics roles. So let's quickly jump into the problem. So we have been given a purchase table which contains two columns. User ID, which represents the unique identifier of a user. Then we have a purchase date column, which tells us when the user made a purchase. Now, each user can have multiple purchase records in this table. If we see in the table, for user ID 1, we have 3 purchases. For user ID 2, we have 2 purchases. For 3, we have 3 purchases. And 4, we have a single purchase. Now, our task, it's very simple, but very important. First, we need to identify the first purchase date. Basically, when the user made their very first transaction. Now, second, we need to calculate the number of days since that first purchase up to the current date. Suppose the user made the first purchase yesterday, then today day since first purchase will be 1 day. If the user made the first transaction 10 days before, then today it will be 10 days since the first purchase. And we have also given an expected output. The expected output will be user ID, first purchase date, and days since first purchase. Essentially, we are trying to answer these two questions. When did each user start? Second, and how long has it been since then? Now, as a follow-up to the solution, there is one more question where we keep all transactions level data while still calculating this matrices. To understand these problems, let's go to Excel first, then we'll go to SQL and try to solve it using SQL. Now, for the first problem, what we need is, we need this user ID column, then first purchase date, and we also need days since first purchase. So these are the 3 columns we need. And here we need only the user ID 1, user ID 2, 3, 4. Then we need the first purchase date. If we see here, the first purchase date is 10th January 2023. There are 3 transactions for user ID 1, 10th January, 15th Feb, 20th March. So the first purchase date will be 10th January. For user ID 2, the first purchase is 5th May 2023. For user ID 3, it is 12th January 2024. Now for fourth user ID, there is only one transaction, so it will be the first purchase date. Now here we need to calculate the days since the first purchase, which is current date minus first purchase date. For the timing, let me write first PD, which will be first purchase date. So this will be calculated for all these user IDs. Once we get this solution, there is a second part of this question. What we need to do is, we need to modify our solution so that we return all the transactions along with the first purchase date since the purchase of each record. So here in the output, we will have user ID, purchase date. Let me copy this for the output. We'll have, let me copy it from the above. So here the output will be, we'll need all the rows in the purchase date and user ID column. Let me remove this. So for first 3 rows, for user ID 1, the purchase date will, first purchase date will be same, and we need to calculate current date minus first purchase date. Same will be for user ID 2. So this will be the first purchase date. Here it will be same, then current minus first purchase date. In this way, we need to calculate for the second solution. I hope you understand what we are trying to calculate here. Now let's go to SQL and check how we can do it practically. Okay, I have already created the table purchases, which has user ID and purchase date, and inserted the values which are there in our problem statement. Now let's check our table. Select star from purchases. Now let's run this query. So now let's check our output. So this is the same table with the data with the values which is there in the problem statement. User ID, purchase date. We have 9 rows. Now we'll solve for the first question. So in the first question, we need the user ID, first purchase date, and days since first purchase. Before we go to the solution, right? It's better to write this statement, select star from purchases, because this will be our table. So this will always be there, select from and the table name. Now, in the first question, we only want one row per user. So the next step is will be to group the data. So what we'll do is group by user ID. What it will do is it will group all rows belonging to the same user together. Now, if I write user ID here, select user ID from purchases group by user ID and run this query. Now, if we see in the output, we have user ID 3421. So we are getting only 4 rows, right? All the 4 user IDs. Let me order it by user ID. So let me run this query again. Now if we see, we are getting 4 rows with 4 user IDs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for each of these user IDs, what we are going to do is we are going to find the first purchase date. Now to find the first purchase date, we are going to use mean function. So mean bracket and the column is purchase date is underscore date. Why we are using mean function? Because it will give us the earliest date which will represent the first purchase. Now, if we run this query, we will get this output. So for user ID 1, the minimum purchase date is 10th January 2023. For user ID 2, 5th May 2023 is the minimum purchase date. For user ID 3, the minimum is 12th Jan 2024. For user ID 4, it is 1st July 2025. Now, if we see in the column name, right, it's coming as mean. So we are going to give it as a alias as first underscore purchase underscore date. Now, let me run the query again. So we are getting first purchase date, user ID, first purchase date. Now we want a third column, which is days since first purchase. For date, what we are going to do is comma. Now at this point, we have successfully found the first purchase date for each user. Next, we need to calculate the number of days since the first purchase. So I'm using PostgreSQL. So in PostgreSQL, we can directly subtract dates using current date minus data. And this will give us the number of days between today and the first purchase date. So this function current underscore date, this is available in PostgreSQL, which will give us the current date minus this minimum purchase date. So let me copy this. Mean purchase date. So current date minus mean purchase date. It will give us the number of days between these 2 dates, between the first purchase date and today's date. And we will give it as an alias as days since first purchase. Now let me run this query again. If we see, we are getting user ID, first purchase date and days since first purchase. So today is 23rd March 2026 minus 10th Jan 2023. It will give us 1168 days. Same for user ID 2, 23rd March 2026 minus 5th May 2023. It will give us 1053 days. Same for user ID 3. It will be 801 days. User ID 4, it will be 265 days. So here in user ID, we are getting only one row. And for user ID 2, 3, 4 also, we are getting one rows. Now For the second question, we want all the rows which is there in the input table, and we want the first purchase date and days since first purchase. Now, I hope you understand how we solve this query using group by and mean purchase date and current date functions. Now, let's solve the same problem using a window function. And this is where things get really interesting. So in the previous solution, we used group by, which gave us one row per user. Now, but what if we want to keep all the transaction level data and still calculate the first purchase date? That's where window functions come in. Let's start with the base query. Select user ID, comma, purchase date from purchase. So this is our input table. Now let's run this query. Now here we want to keep all the rows, all the 9 rows, and we want a first purchase date column and days since first purchase column. So for this, what we are going to do is we are going to use a window function. Now to get the first purchase date for each user without collapsing the rows, we use a window function. So comma. So here also we are going to use min function, min purchase underscore date. Then we are going to use over bracket partition by user ID. So let's break this down. So before I break this down, let me run this query. So for user ID 1, we are getting minimum purchase date as 10th Jan 2023. For the second row also 10th Jan 2023. Third row also 10th Jan 2023. For user ID 2, we are getting 5th May 2023. For the fifth row also 5th May 2020. Same for all the rows. So how this is working is, let me break this down. The min function is the same as before, which we used in group by, right? It finds the earliest date. But the key difference is the over clause. This over clause. Partition by user ID creates a group for each user similar to group by. But instead of reducing rows, it just defines a window of rows to perform the calculation on. So now for every row of a user, SQL looks at all their purchase dates and assigns the same first purchase date. Now, if we look at this output for user ID 1, this 3 rows is a one window. So all 3 rows are getting the minimum purchase date value. For user ID 2, this 2 rows is another window, which is getting 5th May as the minimum purchase date. For user ID 3, this 3 rows, what is the minimum purchase date? 12 Jan. So 12 Jan is populating on all the 3 rows. For fourth row, there is only one, so the same value is populating here. Now let's give it an alias as first purchase date, comma. Now we need to find the days since last purchase. At this stage, we still have all rows, but now each row also knows the user's first purchase date. Next, we are going to calculate the days since first purchase. So just like before, we are going to use current date functions, current date minus, we are going to copy this whole value. Copy, let's paste it here. What we are doing is current date minus minimum purchase date over partition by user ID, means this column, current date minus this minimum date column. Now let's give it an alias as days since first purchase. Now if we run this query, we'll get our final output. See, for user ID 1, we are getting 1168 in all the 3 rows where user ID is 1. For user ID 2, we are getting 1053. For user ID 3, in all the 3 rows, we are getting 801. For user ID 4, we are getting 265. Now, for every transaction, we have the original purchase date, the first purchase date of that user, and the number of days since that first purchase. So the key takeaway here is group by summarizes the data and Windows function enrich data without losing details. This approach is super useful in real world scenarios where you need both row level data and aggregated insights together. I hope you got the idea how we solve this problem using group by as well as Windows function. If you have any other SQL question which you want to solve us, you can also put it in the comment section. We'll look into it and we'll try to make a video on it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.